So Donald Trump is absolutely crashing out and he's dragging the Republicans down with him. And then on top of that, the MAGA base is also checking out. Basically, we're watching the Titanic or the Trump-tanic sink live. And let's see what happens with this thing. Look at the headlines. MAGA leaders warn Trump. The base is checking out. Will he listen? Long story. Well, at least right now he's not listening. And basically, he's a delusional grandpa and everyone's trying to corral the guy because he does have name recognition in the MAGA base, and he brought a bunch of MAGA people who wouldn't normally vote, brought them to the polls, and that pushed Republicans over the top. But I think a lot of these people aren't going to vote anymore, and the Republicans that are then without a leader, without an identity, and they're really in trouble. This is what it says, and it's fascinating to go through this stuff because you get an inside look on essentially their turmoil. It says, as Donald Trump ate his crab cake lunch inside the White House last month, conservative pollster Mark Mitchell tried to explain that there was a disconnect between what the administration seemed to be focused on and what Trump's passionate base of supporters wants to see. So basically, Trump's, will talk about himself. He'll talk about golf, ballrooms, arches. Recently he was talking about snakes and how people look like his daughter Ivanka. Like this, all sorts of weird, whacked out stuff. And even though, yes, part of this MAGA base is a cult, they don't necessarily go along with everything. And so this pollster is like trying to communicate to Trump, like, dude, we're going to get crushed. Listen to this stuff. It's funny. It says, sir, you got shot at the Butler rally. It's coming from the pollster, right? That was really strong optics. And then he said, here's a quote. You said, fight, 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 but nobody ever clarified what that means, okay? And right now you're fighting Marjorie Taylor Greene and not actually fighting for Americans. When you read this stuff, it's like the only way to communicate with Trump is through either social media posts, which is how they get his attention. They'll print up like these, big things, put on big play cards and talking like stupid memes, or literally talking this kind of way. It's kind of crazy. He really is that delusional grandfather. Here's more. It says, it's fascinating. It says, the head pollster of the Rasmussen report, so that's a conservative pollster, right? Warned Trump that many of his supporters believe he hasn't, quote, drained the swamp, right? So they're not seeing the promises that he, promised to do. And basically his base is waking up to realize that he's a con artist. To point, make it simplest point. More. To the extent to which we were talking about the economic populism message, he wasn't as interested as I would have hoped, right? Trump, he just he's not interested in stuff. He's also interested in putting money in his own pocket. He doesn't care about helping other people. And this is coming from an insider report from people who are like, staunch Republican people who want to win. Now, this next thing is describing MAGA, what they care about, and then you can infer what they don't care about. You guys have already guessed, but I'll go through it and you'll listen. It says they're talking about Trump's shortcomings here. It says, MAGA, right, the agenda, have accused the president of focusing too much on foreign affairs. Okay, so they don't want him doing too much with that. Failing to address the cost of living issues he pledged to fix, and aligning himself too closely with billionaires and tech moguls, and resisting the release of the more investigative files on the deceased sexual predator Epstein, right? And, what's disturbing about this, it's all disturbing, is yes, they do care about something. So how much this stuff cost, or, why are you attacking Venezuela? So these kind of things resonate with Republicans, or why are you hanging out with Elon Musk? But what doesn't resonate with Republicans, because let's be frank with you guys, much of the Republican base is very anti-immigrant, and they want to see, I guess, military on the streets, because this isn't really part of what they're concerned about. They're not pissed off about that. They're not pissed off about the tariffs, right? So it's interesting that the things that do come up, essentially the Republicans, right, are okay with some things, but not with other things. I'm just telling you what it says. And so, what I always do in the channel is just like focus on the economy, jobs, these kind of things, cost of living, as you could say, because that's something that everyone in the U.S. can relate to. I wish other people, say the Republican Party, could relate to. We should have due process, we should have democracy, and we should, not just show up mass people and just basically start kidnapping everyone. So that's disturbing that they don't care about that, but I already knew that. I just wanted to tell you what they're saying. When you look at this one also, this is even interesting. It says, His advisors anticipate complaints from Trump's base could even become louder as the midterms approach. And basically, what it was is like they were planning to send out Trump once a week to, try to rally the base or whatever. And then he just did that thing at the casino in Pennsylvania, and it was terrible. Like the guy was like, making fun of affordability, these kind of things, and just doing what Trump does. And it's like, what do you do if you're the Republicans? You don't really have another leader. Are you going to do send out Vance? Probably not, right? You're going to send out Trump because again, the Republicans have that edge to where if you can get people who don't normally vote or don't normally pay attention to politics, get them to show up to the polls. But I think Trump's a kind of an unusual case. And then theoretically, I guess this is from, say, Marjorie Taylor Greene's point of view as being like a strategist, is maybe she's trying to make the pivot to sort of fill that lane within a different version of it. So that would be my guess on it. And, you may laugh now at Marjorie Taylor Greene being a power and, in that part of the political spectrum, but you never know with these people. I mean, it was, to me, it's always Trump is completely inept and unqualified, but there's a portion of the country that go along with it because essentially all you have to do is just appeal to their, let's be frank with you guys, their bigotry and other, biases and stuff like that. It's frustrating, but there is a segment of population like that. It was interesting too that when you go through this, it also says whenever you get Trump to talk about something, he's like, I guess, not interested in many things, but if you get him talking about golf, he loves talking about that. So it's like, oh yeah, my golf buddy Brett Baer, Lindsey Graham, these kind of things. It's as stupid as it sounds. This is actually from one of the influencer people, Charlie Kirk's thing. They were talking about criticism of Trump. This is what they say. All we've really seen is punchy tweets, cool video edits, but really no follow through on any of the promises, okay? And if he listened to his base, he was connected to us even just through social media, you would see the average person is still struggling to buy groceries. The housing crisis is still on the mind of everybody. That inflation is a really big issue. And when Americans see billions of dollars going overseas to any country, it really feels like a betrayal when we're struggling here at home. And you can see, like, I think people, it's so ridiculous though. I mean, Trump's obviously a con man, but this particular second term, it's like after a year, people are getting fed up. There is still some of his base with him, but the pieces are peeling away. And when you hear from the inside, that's like, hey, it's emergency time. We got to call in the pollster that's like try to show Trump the numbers and shake him up a bit. And like I told you guys before, it's like that movie Airplane where they're trying to stop the person from panicking. Like wake up, yeah, wake up. It's a joke scene. If you guys know the scene of Airplane, you get it. But it's funny because we saw a similar report also where they were saying they needed to use whatever advisor they could. It could be Besson, it could be Lutnick, or Karen Levitt, or whoever, and they would all take turns trying to talk to the guy. It's interesting to hear this stuff because Trump is still in charge in the sense of, yeah, he's president, and it's kind of a competition to manipulate the guy. And I'm sure there's different factions, and I don't know who's on whose faction, meaning that, like, is Stephen Miller and Lutnick one team, and is the Ice Queen is one of the it's like their babysitter. I can't think of her name right now. You guys remind me. It's the chief of staff. It's like her and maybe Jameson Greer and Levitt and Hicks at another team, whatever. But this is how this game is played. If you've ever been in a company or organization and the boss is a certain way, and basically you start to form alliances, or basically you just trust more people than not, or if you have coworkers, you're going to like some, you're not going to like others. And I'm sure there are factions going on right now in the White House. I haven't seen that report anywhere. I'm just telling you, that's just how human dynamics work. Like, for example, Duffy and Hegseth and RFK, I think they all like each other because they're all doing like pull-ups with together and stuff like that. And they'll always mention like, oh, we tried to invite someone else, but they didn't want to come, or we're not going to invite that person because they don't want to do it or whatever. I'm willing to bet that no one likes Marco Rubio. I don't think he hangs out with any of the people. And it might be the similar thing with Vance also. So it's kind of interesting. I'm just here talking about dynamics, and that's the stuff that I think people are positioning themselves post-Trump, and this is why you're starting to hear about this. There's a lot of grumblings in the Republican Party. This is something else that's interesting. One person writes, if I had known what Trump was going to turn into now, I would have stayed home. And that right there will tell you exactly what's going on with the MAGA base. Now, while that's happening, I do want to mention just an update on the shooting situation. This is where we're at. With Brown, I guess they detained someone, but they call it a person of interest, and then they end up releasing said person. So I think the shooter is still at large, from my understanding of it. And one thing I noticed is that a name did get out there ahead of time, and suddenly everyone on social media was already fighting over about the motives of said person, but it ends up not being the right person at all. And so that's why I didn't mention anything about the person of interest until you get confirmation, is he being charged or any of this kind of stuff, because you got to be really careful in this social media environment, right? Things can, with AI or whatever, rumors can spread very, very quickly, and even Elon Musk can basically boost whatever algo, or someone can pay to get things boosted in algo or whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that when we talk about stuff, I always try to make it really clear. This is what's reported. This is what's our facts. These are things I don't know, and then some things are just my opinion. So this is why I think it's important to where in our community we have these honest discussions about any of these things. And I'm just telling my opinion stuff when I go through the Trump stuff. It just seems to be falling apart quicker and quicker, and you can also see it in public. So for many people out there, I know sometimes in comments people feel pessimistic about things, but I wouldn't. I think we're seriously seeing the implosion of the Republican Party, and this could damage them for years. And I'll give you an example why. If you know you're going to get trounced in the midterms, right? If you know the blue wave is coming because Trump is sinking your party, you don't really want to run because it's a big waste of money. It's kind of like when everyone kind of knew Barack Obama was going to win the first time around. Who wants to run against that? It's like, and yes, John McCain ran, but he couldn't get a good running mate whatsoever, right? It ended up being Sarah Palin. So because they had to try something, well, okay, we'll go with someone no one knows and try to throw a Hail Mary, basically, was what it was. And it's a similar kind of situation, say, with Trump, just politically speaking, the guy's, you could say toxic, but you don't want to tie yourself too close to him. And some Republicans have built a whole career on being close to Trump, and that game plan is ending very, very quickly. So I think you're going to see a lot of really turmoil and radical things into 2026, and then also you're going to have unemployment go up. And I think whoever from either party, whoever addresses say cost of living and unemployment, those are going to be the big issues going forward. So that's my thoughts on this stuff. We'll track this together, and I always appreciate watching, because as we watch all of these things unfold on a daily basis, I just feel like we're experiencing this together, and I thank you for that. So I'll catch you on the next video, and I thank you for watching.